Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I just want to say that as I look out, it warms me to see the faces of so many people that I love and care for, and exciting to see all the new faces too. This congregation is so dear to me for many reasons. The biggest ones being the people here and the connections I've gotten to make, as well as everything I've learned from being here, being a part of this church. What I'm going to be sharing today is my attempt to consolidate all of the thoughts and feelings I've been experiencing that have been inspired by being a part of this community. For those who know me well, know my mind is always going, so I have many thoughts to share and will do my best to be concise and stay on point. With that in mind, please feel free to get up and step out for any reason at any time. Also, some of the views and opinions I express may be challenging for people for different reasons. I just ask that if you notice a reaction in yourself to something I say, try to sit with it and reflect on why it caused the reaction it did. However, please do what is best for you and know you're allowed to do whatever you need to do to care for yourself. To keep myself focused, I have decided to use the topic of bodily autonomy as the anchoring point of my sermon. Bodily autonomy is the right for a person to govern what happens to their body without external influence or coercion. I have chosen to look through this lens as it is what connects together so many issues and causes I think about constantly and that are close to my heart. I will also attempt to explain the ways in which I view these issues and how seeing them as all connected leads me to the conclusion that the most essential work we can be doing right now is learning to build trust in order to build, support, and maintain our beloved communities and our collective futures. So many struggles and liberation movements intersect at the issue of bodily autonomy. More specifically, fighting against state institutions getting to decide what you can do with your own body, taking away people's innate human right to choose for themselves. Some current issues that more obviously relate to body autonomy that come to mind include reproductive rights, people having the right to choose when and if to be pregnant, and trans rights, having access to gender-affirming healthcare and the right to medical transition. I imagine, or at least hope, that everyone here would be in agreement that these are examples of current issues where our right to choose is being increasingly threatened and our access to healthcare is incrementally limited, and that this requires our collective action to fight back against. The right to autonomy, to have control over one's own choices and final say on one's own life decisions, is a fundamental human right. I also consider freedom of movement to be connected to the fight for autonomy, the right for any person to have the same access to move around and inhabit the world. In my opinion, this is a human right because it is the most natural human tendency. After all, that's how humans ended up all around the world. When we include freedom of movement, we then connect immigration rights, as borders restrict freedom of movement to prevent people from escaping violence or reuniting with family, as well as the rights for the unhoused, as we deny them the right to exist safely in public spaces and access to safe, sanitary spaces where they can rest. Now, it's easy to agree that people deserve autonomy when we're thinking of ourselves and people we identify with. We express fears of losing our rights and access to the resources we currently have, and I am in no way discounting the validity of the anxieties over, I wrote this a while ago, what's to come in the near future and what we've already been seeing happening. I am, however, asking that we acknowledge and reflect on the people and populations who we as a society already limit or entirely deny the autonomy of. I worked as a direct support professional for several years, providing in-home care and advocacy for people with disabilities. One critically important concept I learned from my many trainings was that of dignity of risk, an idea that originated in the 1960s from within the intellectual and developmental disability communities. Dignity of risk is the idea that self-determination and the right to take reasonable risks are essential for dignity and self-esteem. As caregivers, support staff, and loved ones, the idea of allowing the people we support to take the same risks we do is vital to providing person-centered quality care. Working within disability communities has really highlighted for me the ways our systems are designed to impact and limit people. How can we say we are affirming the dignity and autonomy of other people if we allow systems that require people to trade parts of or their full autonomy in exchange to receive bare minimum support? Any members present who have dealt with the system to access disability services knows the frustrating, needlessly complicated processes involved. We justify taking away rights and autonomy either through vilifying or infantilizing different demographics. For the disabled, we argue that their higher needs for support proves incompetence and therefore cannot be trusted to be responsible for themselves and their lives, leading to treating adults like children and ignoring their wants and overlooking existing capabilities. Speaking of which, I view the way we treat children in our culture as unacceptable. Children have very few rights and are entirely dependent on one or two adults on average. Children are often denied the vital community that is needed to truly keep kids safe. Children are a disempowered class in our society. Children are vulnerable, need guidance, and require care, and because of that, this makes them dependent on adults. Our culture views this dependence as making the guardians entitled to treating the children in their care however they see fit in exchange for meeting their needs. It is hard to be a child. They are able to be overpowered by any adult and are constantly having things done against their will. We need to work with people, children are people, to figure out how to support and accommodate them so they are able to choose for themselves. Work with people to create ways they can communicate their choices and wants. However, we all know that our decisions and actions always have consequences. And what happens when our actions cause harm to others? When someone is considered or labeled a danger to themselves or others, we as a society respond by removing them from public life and punishing them with incarceration in some form, either with prisons or institutionalization. I currently work in behavior management support, and from my work, I have learned that punishment just doesn't work for behavior modification. It gives short-term results and creates long-term problems. Punishment is actually a reinforcing behavior for the punisher, as it gives them a sense of power and control over another. It gives a relief, gives a sense of power, and all it teaches the one being punished is to fear and distrust the punisher, which leads to secrecy and withdrawal. It breaks trusts and prevents real connection from forming. If the goal of a justice system is to discourage crime and right wrongs, then punishment is simply an ineffective method. Punishing and locking people away doesn't prevent crime or harm and does nothing to help the party that was harmed. Meeting people's material, emotional, and social needs is how we prevent crime and harm, and that means learning to really listen to each other and believe what each other has to say. Restorative justice practices focus on working with everyone involved when harm is done to reach a place of accountability and healing for the purpose of keeping people in community. The goal of restorative justice is to provide restitution for the party harmed and rehabilitation for the one who caused harm. We cannot treat anyone as disposable and must learn alternative ways of dealing with harmful behavior. Our church's covenant of right relations is very similar in purpose to restorative justice practices, as our covenant is both an agreement to stay in right relations with the community and a guide on how to do so. We listen to understand, we speak to be understood, we approach everyone with respect and the intent of coming back into covenant. My beautiful wife, Sylvan, is the one who taught me that we are not our actions. We are, of course, responsible for our actions and their impacts on others, but we don't have to define ourselves by what we do and lock ourselves in cycles of behavior thinking we are powerless to change. We are all human and all have the capacity to transform. We all have the capability of great compassion and care, as well as great cruelty and carelessness. We must never forget our own capacity to do harm, for when we believe ourselves incapable of hurting others, then we do not believe people when they tell us we have harmed them. When we deny the fact that any of us can be the harm doer, we distance ourselves from our shared humanness and stop extending grace to each other and ourselves. I think often of this quote by the great James Baldwin, civil rights activist and queer ancestor who worked alongside Martin Luther King Jr. He says, "Love has never been a popular movement, and no one's ever really wanted to be free. The world is held together, really it is held together by the love and the passion of a very few people. Otherwise, of course, you can despair. Walk down the street of any city, any afternoon, and look around. What you've got to remember is you're looking at is also you. Everyone you're looking at is also you. You could be that person. You could be that monster. You could be that cop. And you have to decide in yourself not to be." What I've learned from my 30 years of being alive is that people are the experts on themselves. Even when we may have years of experience and knowledge and feel like we know what would be best for someone, the truth is we have 0 years of experience being that person and can never truly know their inner world, everything they know, have experienced, or are capable of. We have to trust each other to make the decisions we feel are best and allow for the mistakes and wrong decisions we're all bound to make. Even if you think someone is making a huge mistake or that you would do things entirely differently, you have to let people make their mistakes and not take away their autonomy in an attempt to save them from themselves. Because what if you are wrong? Another powerful quote that resonated deeply with me when I first heard it, that was shared by our former minister, Reverend Ben. During one of his last sermons with us, he shared the wisdom from the American monk and writer Thomas Merton, who said, "Our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they are worthy. That is not our business, and in fact, it is nobody's business. What we are asked to do is to love, and this love itself will render both ourselves and our neighbors worthy." Our first shared principle is affirming the inherent dignity and worth of every person. I think it is the first principle because it is the most foundational and is really the heart of Unitarian Universalism. And as such, I believe it is our responsibility as Unitarian Universalists to treat everybody like we believe it is true, which means remembering that even the most unforgivable, discardable person you can think of is still a person and doesn't deserve dehumanizing treatment. We can never truly know why people do what they do or what is in their hearts. In my experience and from what I've learned, most people are dealing with some kind of unseen pain or trauma and are trying to cope and do their best to just make it to tomorrow. Everyone is trying their best, even when you think they're not, they are. That's just what their best looks like right now. Everyone is doing their best and everyone can do better. To me, the central goal of Unitarian Universalism is finding ways to hold respect and dignity and grace for each other as we try to navigate the messy, complicated venture of being alive. Thank you, everyone, and blessed be.